So a crackdown on these so-called shady lending practices, would it hurt more than help in a very fragile housing market?
Our Fox panel joins us now to discuss this. We have Pat Powell from Powell Financial, Gary Kaltbaum from GaryK.com, Joran Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute, Victoria Barrett from Forbes, and Peter Schiff, author of Crash Proof. Peter, we haven't seen you in a couple of days. Here comes the Fed, requiring things that, frankly, a lot of people thought should have been required in the first place, such as quality documentation and all kinds of other issues that you say, well, I had to do that for my loan, but what about all these people who didn't? Do you think the Fed is going to make a difference here, and should they be getting involved?
No. I mean, all of this is going to come about anyway without the Fed. I mean, lenders are realizing their mistakes, and they're not going to repeat them. But the root cause of those mistakes in the first place was the Fed itself and its inflationary monetary policy, irresponsibly lowering interest rates the way they did and leaving them there. So they created this Frankenstein. You know, it's ridiculous for them now to be trying to think about ways of dealing with it. In fact, what they're doing now is more of the problem. They still have interest rates much too low, and they're lowering them. They should be tightening up on money supply. They should be raising interest rates right now and let the market sort this out. Yes, it means home prices are going to go down, but they have to go down.
Well, Victoria, it's hard to argue with the fact that those rates were held low for such a long time by Alan Greenspan. A full year Fed funds rate at 1%. So clearly that had a lot to do with our problems. Will the regulations make the problems worse?
I fear they will, simply because the subprime market is going to evaporate. If you are a lender, you're not going to want to touch that market for fear of lawsuits, because part of this proposal puts more onus on lenders to verify whether someone can pay back their loan. And that's just going to be a bonanza for trial lawyers. And it also does away with the incentive of a lender, and specifically a broker, to do subprime mortgages. So the problem is you're going to have a lot of folks who, could get a loan before for a home that aren't going to be able to get a loan now. So I think this could do more harm than good.
Well, Gary Kaltbaum, some would argue that the people who won't be able to get loans now are people who shouldn't be getting loans in the first place. But is there anything wrong? I mean, let's stick up for the Fed for a second here, or not. What's wrong with requiring that there's no deceptive advertising? And that's one of the things the Fed proposes doing.
First off, I cannot stand up for the Fed. Look, my biggest problem with all this, and I've been saying it for 2 years, they watched it, they saw it, they did nothing about it. They said there was never a problem until it's their problem. Now the same idiots who got it all wrong are trying to fix things. I don't want these guys doing anything to fix things because they've been wrong about everything. Look, this should never happen in the first place. Deceptive practices are illegal. People should go to jail. People should be fined. I don't see any of that happening. Why aren't people getting in trouble for handing out $250,000 mortgages to people without any documents? That's my biggest issue. This is not going to hurt. It's not going to help. Hopefully the lending industry learns their lesson and goes back to the norm.
Pat Powell, I hate excess regulations almost as much as I hate excess taxes. But the one thing that's not on here that I was kind of surprised about was no minimum down payment. That is, a lot of people got into these mortgages without putting a penny down. I grew up thinking you had to put at least 10%, if not 20% down.
Absolutely. The banks used to go out and kick the tires on your house. They used to make sure they'd kick the tires on you as well to make sure that you were going to be able to pay them back. And it's the securitization that has caused banks to basically relax all their regulations. I'm glad that they didn't put in a required minimum down payment, because I think the market can find its own requirements. Suppose you get a big fancy job, you're just out of college, and you get a $500,000 a year job, but you haven't saved enough for a house.
So rent.
But can't you afford a mortgage?
Rent.
If you can find a lender who will give you a mortgage, you should be able to get it. It shouldn't be the Fed who determines. Well, I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I'm just saying it shouldn't be the Fed or you or I determining whether somebody should rent or buy. It should be the overall marketplace.
Sure. Joran, can you just tell me what's wrong with the Fed's sort of good intentions of getting involved and just setting some basic guidelines for getting mortgages and giving mortgages?
Well, everything is wrong with it. They shouldn't be regulating this business to begin with.
I love this guy.
Well, I'm consistent, you know that. I mean, all they can do is mess this up. They're going to dry up the subprime mortgage market, as was noted. But the Fed shouldn't be getting into the business of setting contracts. I mean, they'll take out all innovation out of the markets and so on. Now, if fraud is committed, We have plenty of laws on the books about fraud. We don't need more regulations in order to prosecute people who committed fraud. Let them go to jail. This is just ridiculous. Prepayment penalties, banning those. What's wrong with prepayment penalties?
Well, I think there's something very wrong with the prepayment penalties, and that's when you look at the actual documents and how they put them together, and you look at what the broker's role was in this. They got incentives as much sometimes as 4% of the value of the mortgage to put you into a much higher costing mortgage than what you might otherwise qualify for. Let me finish my point. And the only way that they could the only way they could justify those extreme payments was to put in these prepayment penalties. These payments were never disclosed to the buyers, so the buyers had no idea that all of this was going into their mortgage. So I think there are some justifications here.
And none of these
the borrowers have to take some responsibility over the contracts they sign.
A prepayment penalty is kind of like a back-end sales charge in a mutual fund. I mean, you get a lower cost going in, but look, this should be up to the lenders. I mean, they're going to rediscover. I mean, a down payment. You talk about nothing down. The down payment is the single most important part of a loan, because that's what assures you that the borrower is not going to commit to a mortgage he can't afford, because he doesn't want to lose that down payment. And it protects the lender if they do foreclose, because there's some assets there.
Go ahead, Vicki.
One thing I will credit the Fed for is they're trying to inject more transparency into this market. I think a lot of folks got hosed because they didn't know what they were getting into. They're seeing all these contracts that are in, gobbledygook English. If we could make this process simpler, the system overall would benefit. That's a positive.
Well, tell us how we'd make it simpler, Victoria.
Well, by putting these contracts in English so people know what they're getting into. Put these contracts in English so people know what they're getting into. More information would help buyers make better decisions.
They knew what they were getting into. They thought they were getting into
exactly what they were getting into.
Hold on,
Don't sign a contract you don't understand.
Stand by, Gary.
Hold on, Gary's here. Look, the biggest problem is this is like eating soup with a fork, what Paulson's proposing and the Fed. The biggest problem right here is the fact that people bought at fantasy prices. They're all underwater. They're better off renting. They're going to still drop the keys off at the doorstep because they're paying off nothing.
Sounds like Dave Ramsey talking, by the way. Gang, thanks very much. A lot more on this subject. Other commodities are trading in the stratosphere. They're taking food prices, though, along with them for the ride.
Is that a bigger problem than the cost of energy? We bring back our Fox panel now to discuss it. And Peter Schiff, you can start on this one. What do you think? Which is the bigger issue?
Well, it's inflation. I mean, remember, there's no such thing as food price inflation or energy inflation. There's just inflation. When you inflate a ball, it expands. It doesn't rise. Prices rise and fall, but it's the money supply that's being expanded. That's the inflation. The result is that prices are rising. That's why wheat is going up. That's why oil is going up. And, if you take the typical family today, if they spend $300 a week on groceries, my guess is 3 years from now, they're going to have to spend $600 a week to buy the identical items. And I think what's probably going to happen is, rather than spending that much money on food, because they're not going to have it, the average American family is going to make big changes in its diet over the years. They're going to eat a lot less meat, a lot less fish and fresh produce, and a lot more rice, a lot more bread, and a lot more potatoes.
Well, Pat, let me throw out another suggestion that actually I think Peter might agree with. We are subsidizing farmers, particularly millionaire farmers. 2/3 of all subsidies go to farmers that are rich, to the tune of billions and billions and billions of jobs. Just another agricultural bill. Is that perhaps spurring on things as well? I mean, we're paying them more, and we're paying more.
Yeah, you're going to have a really hard time getting me to like subsidies of any kind. So I think, though, that Peter has it really wrong. I think this is really a very basic economics 101 supply-demand issue. We have three reasons why these are going up. Prices are going up. You have ethanol, which is taking food off your table and putting it into...
But again, government subsidies.
Yes, but it's changing the way we use a particular product. You have oil. Do you know that to every one of us Americans, it costs about 400 gallons of oil products to put food on our table? And you have population. The world populations are expanding. And you have middle class lining up all over the world. The BRIC countries ready to eat the way we eat. This is a basic supply-demand issue. It's systemic, and it's going to be here for a long time.
What you're missing is that a growing economy lowers food prices. When you have economic growth and expansion...
Ridiculous. A growing economy doesn't lower food prices.
Does.
You have so much land, you can plant so much on the land, and you can get so much out of it.
Okay, look, Gary's back.
You don't understand basic economics.
Hold
back
Peter,
to the U.S.
Hold on.
Let me explain this for a second.
Peter, hold on the insults for a second. Gary Kaltbaum, you go.
Let me explain what you said is wrong, though.
He's not listening.
In a minute, Gary.
Thank you. Have a great day, Peter. Look, shrinking supply and stronger demand is always going to lift prices higher. That is exactly what's going on with wheat. That's exactly what's been going on for months, even longer than that. And the dynamic is not going to change. I will say this, just like I said oil at 100, I think was about done because of speculative frenzy. I think the latest move in wheat has the same type of characteristics, so I think they're going to start coming down here. But it doesn't change the dynamics that overall
we
are paying more for everything.
We want to get Victoria in there as well. Go ahead, Vicki.
Well, I'm less concerned about the wheat prices rising simply because it's easier to change your eating habits than it is to change your oil consumption. You can't change the length of your commute and shorten it in half. Most people can't decide not to go into work half of the week. But food, you can change your consumption behavior. Well, I don't agree. I think he's overstating inflation. I think this is a supply-demand issue, which is what Pat was saying. But you can eat wheat-free bread. It's better for you anyway, right?
We've got to take a commercial break. We are a little over an hour away from the closing bell.
We'll be right back. One simple question emerging from all the debate on Capitol Hill: is Congress spending your money wisely?
You really want my opinion?
Yeah.
I've never been happy with the way they spend it, but let's take it to our Fox panel. Gary Kaltbaum of GaryK.com, Yoran Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute, Victoria Barrett, Associate Editor for Forbes magazine, and once again, Peter Schiff, author of Crash Proof. Gary K., go for it. What do you think about how the government's spending your money? You happy with that?
Talking about teeing the golf ball up for an answer. Look, I don't mind government. I just don't like what I've seen over the last few years. It's a cesspool. There's too much money in politics now. The spending is out of hand. The earmarks are out of hand. I say we get rid of everyone in there, put all new people in that really do care and don't spend like crazy people and really do the things that need to get done. And by the way, nobody has still done anything about Social Security, which is a ticking time bomb down the road.
Well, and Victoria, the thing is they've got Social Security, they've got the AMT, which is going to hit millions and millions of Americans unless something is done immediately. I mean, these folks, their focus is on how much and where and what they can spend, not how they can save, right?
Exactly. That's the fundamental problem with Washington right now. No one talks about cost cutting. And like we've said before, there's just thousands of pages of these earmarks. There needs to be more transparency and more accountability. We're spending so much on government entitlements. Meanwhile, we have these time bombs like Social Security that we need to address, but no one wants to touch it because it's complicated and it would require cutting costs, cutting spending, and that's not popular.
Well, why, Yoran, wouldn't a congressman say, man, I'm going to be the most popular guy in the world if I cut spending, because that's truly what so many people do want. Why don't they do it?
Well, because people say they want it, but actually when you look at surveys, people don't want it. They want their cake and to eat it too. I mean, look, the job of the government is to protect individual rights, not to hand out to everybody handouts left and right. Hundreds of billions of dollars of wasted money, redistributed wealth that is not being paid for and will be paid for by future generations. I mean, the budget in Washington is absurd. It is ridiculous, and the real core functions of government are not doing well, and instead, the money's being squandered.
Well, Peter, there are a couple of politicians, one of whom I believe you support. You're a Ron Paul guy, if I'm not mistaken, who say, look, it's time to just, pull up our boots, cut organizations that we don't need of questionable purpose, like the Department of Commerce, perhaps the Department of Education, the Department of Energy. Is anybody going to take folks like that seriously?
Well, I hope so. I'm taking them seriously. I've given them money. I've encouraged my clients to give them money. I would encourage the viewers of the program to give money to Ron Paul and give them your vote. Why should we expect Congress to spend our money wisely? I mean, it's not their money. It's our money. That's the problem.
That's right.
They're spending our money to secure their own re-election. And that's what's important to them, but it's not important to us.
Gary?
The problem is Peter's right. They actually think it is their money. They think it's their right, and some people actually think they need more of our money. I am amazed the fact that they get $2 to $3 trillion of our bucks, and people are proposing to raise taxes now in an economy that's slowing down just so they can spend more and more. It is absolutely obscene, and if anybody wants to know why Ron Paul is catching on, it is just for these reasons.
See, I think the popularity contest will be won sometimes in some realms by the people who say they will cut.
That's right.
Right, David?
That's right. Okay. Well, they've already gone after fats and sugars.
Yeah, that's right. If caffeine is the next target for food police nationwide, should that give companies like Coke and Pepsi the shakes? Our Fox panel back now to tackle this, and here we go. Peter Schiff, I'll let you start with this one first. What do you think? Here they come telling us that we need warning labels on Coke.
Well, it's like, the last segment. It's another example of the government wasting our money. The free market is already working here. There are plenty of ways to buy decaffeinated coffee. Coke sells caffeine-free Coke. If people don't want caffeine, there's plenty of ways not to have it. The individual consumers can weigh the benefits and the risks of caffeine, and they can make a choice. We don't need the government interfering in that process.
There's another Californian story about sugar, too. They're not only getting into caffeine, they're trying to ban sugar. They've already banned trans fats in restaurants in New York. Where does it end?
Well, it doesn't end. This is my home state of California. But, this is the same story as mortgages. The Fed now is abandoning its role of defending individual rights. Instead, it's dictating what kind of mortgages we can get, what kind we can't, what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat. I'm waiting for the veggie police to go to everybody's home and make sure those kids eat their veggies every day. And if not, maybe the parents should go to jail. The government's job is to protect us all, to feed us, to make sure we get into a nice home, to make sure we can pay off our mortgage. This is what the nanny state has come to. And this is consistent with the budget, and it's consistent with the mortgage story.
Okay, well, Pat Powell, since I just get the sense that you're going to hate this as well, let me try and play devil's advocate. Red Bull, which is may or may not get a warning label at some point. A lot of kids drink that, and
including my daughter.
Okay,
really?
And wouldn't you like to at least maybe see what they're getting into if the government helps out and clarifies in a warning label?
I have no problem with labeling. I have absolutely no problem with labeling caffeine, sugar, salt, putting it on the label, but that's where it ends. And I think all these people that are going crazy with government getting involved basically need to get a life. This is just ridiculous, that they're going to police what you and I eat and what my 18-year-old daughter drinks.
They're already
it's just
policing
absurd.
what we eat. What about the trans fat ban in New York? They're already policing what we eat.
Another ridiculous.
Gary Kaltbaum, I'm sure you want to get on this. Go ahead.
Look, it's the typical pick and choose by the government, though. Coffee, which is 3 times as much caffeine, hey, that's fine, but Coca-Cola is not fine. Obviously, the coffee lobby has been working overtime. I don't want government telling me what to do. I don't want government telling me what's right or what's wrong. If I want to eat 10 Hostess Twinkies, I want to do it, and they should just stay out of the way. And, they're all right. This nanny state of getting involved in everything is getting to be a little bit too much.
I know I'm not the only one who realized once they started labeling sodium content on some foods that it was pretty horrifying, Gary, how much sodium was in certain products, and you turn it over on the back and say, oh, forget it, I'm not going to buy this. This is horrible for my heart. Isn't there some value in it?
I don't argue that point, but the consumer gets to decide.
Sure.
That's what free markets are all about. That the consumer read the label, let the consumer do some investigation. All this info's on the web. Let the consumer decide what's good for them and what they want to eat.
Let's ask the Ayn Rand libertarian here. You're on. What about labeling? Do you have any problem with the government insisting that at least there be fair disclosure as to what's in the product that you're ingesting?
Well, absolutely. I don't think the government has any role in dictating
even labeling
any of this
you're
stuff.
Against?
Even labeling I'm against. Let the markets sort this out. If consumers really want labels, they shouldn't buy products that don't have labels and provide the manufacturers an incentive.
Okay, Peter?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I'm not against labeling as long as it's not the government mandating it. Let the free market. If consumers want to know what's in products, then refuse to buy products that don't have labels, and you're going to get labels.
I don't want to eat mystery food.
No,
Then don't eat it. Nobody forces you to eat mystery food.
Well,
every time you go into a restaurant, you don't know. There's no labeling on restaurant food, but you still go in and you eat it. And if you don't, stay home and eat food you grow yourself.
Well, McDonald's labels. Trust
McDonald's
me, they
labels,
do. And
absolutely.
that's helpful, I think.
But the Food and Drug Administration, Peter, the FDA, all of those organizations that are put out there to protect at least the food that we eat, don't you think there's some benefit to having that?
I think the government is doing far more harm than good with these products. I think it creates a false sense of security among the public. I think probably food is less safe because the government is involved in it than if they would stay out of it.
You know what? You guys and your libertarian talk has boosted the market now to triple digits. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up over 100.
102 points for the Dow at 13,200.
Well, it's more of a stocking stuffer than a big gift, but has the Santa Claus rally begun?
Boy, we're looking for anything here. I mean, we're up 55 points, but Wall Street is heading higher moments before the close, although we're off the earlier highs. Will this continue? We begin our end of the session markets panel with Tracy Burns at the NYSE. Take it, Tracy.
Hey, Liz, we've said this before, that the markets these days are like a basketball game. It's the last 10 minutes that are most exciting part of the day. And no surprise, we were up 100 points just a few minutes ago. Now we're only up 55. I don't think it's anything that you could trust because I think there's still so much uncertainty down here. I think people are just tired. They don't know what to do. They can't figure it out. Goldman didn't rally us like we were hoping. We're going to get news from Morgan tomorrow, which will probably be flip side and just terrible. So there's no trust yet, there's no conviction, and there's certainly no leadership in the financials, which is what they're hoping for. One could argue that maybe we're at the bottom, but I doubt it. I just think at the end, people are cleaning up. You know, you got the big houses trying to get things they don't want off their out of their portfolio before the end of the year. So we're going to continue to see more selling, more volatility. I think the market is tired, even though there's somewhat, there's a lot of stuff on sale. I said to Teddy earlier, it's like me going to Bloomingdale's, everything's on sale, and I just don't feel like buying anything. And he said that is exactly what it's like right now. So we'll leave it at that. Liz, David, back to you guys.
Tracy, thanks very much. Tracy, if you want to stick around, we want to throw it to our panel also. Let's begin with Victoria Barrett. So, Victoria, if this is a Christmas rally, it's a pretty puny one.
Yeah, it's a pretty small one, and I think the days are ahead. We're going to lose some of the gains we made today. There's a lot of folks who are doing tax selling. They're just cutting their losses, and there's a lot of reasons to be uncertain about the future of our economy and the markets. What I like is that companies that are coming out with bullish reports are doing well. So, like Adobe today was a great example. So this isn't an irrationally negative market, and that's a very good, important sign.
Peter, I know you've been concerned about the economy. I went out shopping last night and I got a parking space like that, and I didn't wait in line very long. I know we still have a few more days, certainly, to do any shopping, but how's this going to play out?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is a bear market. Stocks are going down. I mean, there's going to be rallies like we have a rally today, but, the market's going to make lower lows and lower highs. And more important than just the nominal decline is going to be the inflation-adjusted decline. Stocks are going to lose a lot of value. If you want to price them in gold, right now the Dow is at 16.5 ounces of gold. I think by early next year it'll be worth fewer than 15 ounces of gold. I think it could end the year worth fewer than 10 ounces of gold. These are spectacular real declines in the value of stocks. People need to do something to protect their wealth.
Well, Pat, what do we need to do short of selling all of our stocks and buying gold? Are there certain sectors in stocks that we should be looking to?
Yeah, and I don't want to take away that gold does have a place in a lot of portfolios. Sure. A very well diversified portfolio is going to have some gold in it, and it's going to have some commodities in it, and it's going to have some energy stocks in it. I think you have to get over the next couple of weeks and not focus so much on the tax loss selling, as Victoria said, and sort of focus on where you're going to be in the next year, 3 years, 5 years out. And the fact is that we're not going to go into this Great Depression. You need some kind of event to happen to have that scenario play out. And in the absence of information that I just don't see out there, I'm still somewhat optimistic as I go into 2008 and saying we're getting all this bad news out. It's a mediocre year at best, and 2008 is just around the corner.
Yoram, do you see any negativity beyond the obvious? Oh. Okay, we've just lost Yoram. Okay, so Gary Kaltbaum, what about you? I mean, in the overall picture, do you agree with Pat?
Here's my biggest problem right now. I'm always looking for leadership in the market, and you really have a clear lack of leadership going into the new year. I'm not really worried about the next few days. I think you could get a holiday move, but that's the tree. The forest is that overall the market's got a lot of issues. If you just look at the charts of the financials and retail, they're saying something. When you look at financials and retails, which had a mini crash, I think it's the economy, and I'm worried about going into the new year, and I think the first quarter could be tough.
Peter,
Remember,
I'm just curious, I know you put a lot of money abroad, but if you want to keep your money in the States right now, where do you put it?
Well, I guess you can keep it in gold in the States, but if you want to invest it in stocks, I mean, you could buy, the exporters. You could buy the energy companies or the raw material companies, the precious metal companies.
To play off the weak dollar.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just a weak dollar. People have to understand that our phony economy, our borrow from abroad and buy imported products economy is going to come crashing down. It was not viable.
We do make things, Peter. It's not entirely phony. There are people in this country who make physical things that physical people go out to physical stores and buy.
But we don't make enough things. We have a $60 billion a year a month.
All right. That's different from saying it's a phony economy.
It is,
we don't make enough.
It's a phony economy because we're living way beyond our means. We're borrowing money we can't afford to pay back. And the world is starting to figure this out. Interest rates are going to go up spectacularly.
Peter, we are running out of time, and we thank the panel for all of their time.
We're minutes away.